The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere with a dull hum, its silver hull gleaming under the morning sun. Dust kicked up around the landing pad as the hatch opened, revealing a neat line of tall, green-skinned cadets in matching graphite uniforms. Their large, obsidian eyes blinked against the daylight, nostrils flaring at the sudden influx of unfiltered oxygen. Behind them, instructors in navy blue flight suits stood stiffly, clearly trying not to show discomfort with the planet's gravity. Cadet Jace Wyatt watched from the edge of the courtyard, arms crossed, the slightest smile tugging at one side of his mouth. He'd been briefed, of course. An elite unit of cadets from the Andari system was joining the Earth Interplanetary Training Corps for a joint program. Cultural exchange, they called it. Unified strength through shared challenge. What it looked like so far was a dozen aliens trying very hard not to fall on their faces. One of them did. The smallest alien in the group, likely still taller than Jace by a few inches, lost his footing halfway down the ramp and flailed before recovering with a dramatic sweep of his arm. Two others steadied him, but not before a low, musical chuckle rippled through their ranks. Jace's grin widened. Lieutenant Komar, a stern-faced Earth instructor, stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome to Earth. We trust your trip was smooth." The lead alien cadet, identifiable by a silver insignia etched onto his chest plate, nodded curtly. "We endured the descent. Your atmosphere is dense, gravity mildly oppressive." His voice held the kind of amused superiority Jace had heard before from off-worlders who thought humans were cute for surviving on a heavy planet. "Yeah," Jace murmured under his breath. "Try running wind sprints in it." Later, in the mess hall, the integration began in earnest. Human and alien cadets were seated together in groups, each table a study in awkward posture and hesitant small talk. Jace ended up at a table with 3 Earth cadets and 4 aliens, including the leader, Zarek, according to the patch on his uniform. The food situation wasn't helping. The aliens sniffed suspiciously at their trays, one of them actually tapping a steamed potato with a metal instrument. Jace shoveled a spoonful of chili into his mouth and watched them with a casual kind of curiosity. "So," Zarek said, breaking the silence, "you train in this gravity?" Jace swallowed. "Every day. It must be exhausting." "The strain on your joints alone," he leaned back with exaggerated interest, as if studying an exotic creature. "It builds character," Jace replied easily. "And legs." One of the aliens cocked their head. "But surely your athletic programs are adapted, simulated to reduce impact." "Nope." Jace stretched his arms lazily. "We just run up mountains until we stop complaining." A beat of silence passed, followed by a few amused hisses. Alien laughter, apparently. Zarek's brow ridge lifted. "Mountains? You scale geological formations for physical recreation. Not just for fun. For training." Jace wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Survival exercises. Terrain navigation. Builds endurance." The aliens looked at each other. Jace could practically hear their thoughts. Primitive, redundant, barbaric. "It's curious," Zarek said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "that you would condition yourselves against your own planet's extremes. You treat gravity like a challenge to be overcome. We evolved past that mindset." Jace's spoon paused midair. "That's so. Our training is cerebral, controlled, efficient." Zarek gestured to a small device on his belt. "We simulate environments. We don't subject ourselves to them." "Sounds fancy." Jace leaned forward, eyes glinting. "But can your simulations make your legs burn on the 3rd hour of a steep incline, while you're low on water and you can hear something big moving in the trees?" Zarek laughed, not cruelly, but with the same amused attachment a scientist might show a curious insect. "You speak as if that's a strength." Jace shrugged. "Sometimes it is." Another alien at the table chimed in. "Humans are admirably stubborn. I read a case study on your species' tolerance for physical punishment." Zarek tapped a finger against the table. "It is inefficient, though. Predictably wasteful. Risk heavy." "Maybe," Jay said, setting down his tray. "But it works." "Most of the time." There was a pause, and then Zarek leaned in, his voice low. "Show us." Jace blinked. Show you what? This hike. This mountain. Show us what Earth conditioning truly means. He said it with the air of someone offering a game that couldn't possibly be lost. You want to go on a hike? Jace said, eyebrows raised. A light one, as you called it. Zarek tilted his head, mockingly. Unless that was a dramatization? Across the table, Jace's fellow Earth cadets shifted, some grinning, some looking uneasy. They knew what a light hike in the Colorado training region actually meant. No dramatization, Jace replied, his voice casual. You want to go tomorrow? Zarek nodded. I'm curious. Let us experience this character building. You're on. By the time word of the challenge made its way through the training camp, cadets were placing bets, instructors were pretending not to laugh, and Jace was being asked 100 variations of, Are you serious? He just waved them off with a grin and a calm, It'll be fun. The mountain trail selected wasn't the hardest, but it wasn't for amateurs either. A moderate incline for Earth cadets, a test of endurance and mental grit for anyone not used to the terrain, or the gravity. That evening, Jay sat on the bunk in his shared quarters, lacing his boots, when his roommate Carter leaned against the doorway. You're taking them up Route 12? Yup. You realize they're going to hate you by kilometer 3. Jay smiled without looking up. They already do. Might as well earn it. Carter laughed and threw him a protein bar. Try not to break diplomatic relations. Jace caught it and stood, slinging his pack over one shoulder. Don't worry. I'm just going to let the mountain do all the talking. He stepped outside as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in a swirl of orange and pink. The alien barracks were quiet. No doubt they were still calibrating whatever equipment they thought would help them tomorrow. Jace didn't need much. Just good boots, a solid pace, and the knowledge that Earth, heavy and unforgiving, was on his side. By morning, they'd all learned something about gravity, and maybe a little about humility, too. They began again with silence between them, but not the same kind of silence that had marked the start. This one carried weight. The kind of silence that grows when people stop pretending, when breath and burn override bravado, and all that's left is the next step. Jace led, his steps measured and deliberate. Behind him, the alien cadets fell into a looser formation, no longer moving like synchronized circuits, but more like individuals learning the hard geometry of effort. Zarek stayed near the front, his stride slowing just slightly, and his gaze lingering on Jace's back with something that could almost be called respect. The trail narrowed again, snaking along a steep ridgeline with sheer drops on one side and jagged roots clawing from the earth on the other. The air thinned with altitude, and even Jace felt the burn now, deep in his thighs and his lungs, in the tight press of his boots around swelling feet. He welcomed it. This was the part he trained for, where the human body revealed its peculiar genius. Not in speed or strength, but in its stubborn, relentless endurance. Behind him, he heard a scuffle, loose gravel tumbling. He turned just in time to see one of the alien cadets slip. A brief flail of limbs before another caught his arm. Jace moved quickly, stabilizing the pair with practiced efficiency. We need to rest again, the second cadet gasped. His green skin was paler now, tinged toward gray. Jace looked at him, then at the others. They were flagging hard. Even Zarek's shoulders sagged under the weight of gravity's pull, his once pristine uniform now streaked with sweat and earth. 2 more switchbacks, Jace said. Then we break. That spot's flat and it's got shade. The cadet nodded, more grateful than defiant this time. They made it with effort, the group moving like a single living thing now. No longer humans and aliens, but just bodies and willpower. When they reached the ledge, they collapsed with a chorus of muted groans. Jace dropped his pack and pulled out a water pouch, tossing it toward the nearest cadet. No one said thank you. They didn't need to. Zarek sat beside him, silent for a long time, staring out over the valley below. The trees seemed impossibly small from this height, like scattereds of green across a canvas of rock and air. You said this wasn't dramatization. Zarek said finally. I meant it. He nodded. We underestimated not just the environment, but you. Jace tilted his head. You thought we were soft? We thought you were inefficient. Primitive, even. Still do. Zarek didn't answer right away. His eyes traced the horizon. No, I think you are dangerous. That made Jace laugh, tired and full. Because we hike? Because you embrace suffering as a form of growth. That kind of thinking isn't common among species with advanced technology. Most seek to eliminate discomfort. You charge into it. It's not masochism, Jay said. It's survival. Nature doesn't care about simulations. When it hits you, you don't get to pause and recalibrate. Another pause stretched between them. You've trained your mind to control, Jace continued. We've trained ours to adapt. There's a difference. Zarek nodded, not as a rebuttal, but an acknowledgement. Perhaps both are necessary. The wind picked up slightly, tugging at hair and fabric. A hawk circled far overhead, a dark shape against a pale blue sky. They sat there, breathing, recovering. And for the first time, the tension that had marked every interaction between them began to erode, softened by exhaustion and shared hardship. Then the rustling started. It was subtle at first, branches shifting, a quick shuffle of leaves. Jace turned his head. There was nothing immediately visible, but the cadence of the forest had changed. It was too quiet now, and every living thing knew what that meant. Get up, he said, voice low but sharp. Now! Zarek looked at him, confused but obeyed. The others rose, stumbling slightly, confused by the urgency. Jay scanned the tree line, then pointed. We've got movement. East Ridge. Keep together. Don't run. Stay tight. Out of the shadows stepped a creature. Something local, large, and territorial. It wasn't unusual this high up. The cadets had been briefed on fauna, but simulations couldn't teach you what it felt like to be watched by something that didn't fear your tech. It resembled a feline, but with longer limbs and scaled patches across its back. Its eyes gleamed yellow, and its muscles shifted with slow grace as it began to circle. Zarek moved toward his belt, reaching for a stunner. No, Jay said immediately. That'll make a charge. Just hold position. It's testing us. The creature growled low, the sound more vibration than noise. One of the alien cadets took a step back. Hold, Jay said again, louder. It doesn't want to fight. It just wants to know if we're prey. Silence. The creature sniffed the air, then slowly retreated into the brush. Never turning its back, eyes locked on them until the last possible moment. Only when it was gone did anyone breathe. Jace exhaled slowly. Welcome to Earth. Zarek was still staring at the space where the creature had been. That could have killed us. Yeah, Jay said. That's why we train. The rest of the hike passed in quiet reflection. No more taunts, no more prideful declarations. Just movement, step after step until the summit came into view, framed by jagged rocks and wildflowers swaying in the wind. When they reached the top, no one cheered. They didn't need to. The view was reward enough. Endless mountains rolling toward the horizon, light bouncing off stone and sky like something divine. Jace dropped his pack and turned to the group. You made it. Zarek looked around, eyes wide not with conquest, but with reverence. So this is why you climb. Jace nodded. This is why we keep climbing. He offered a hand. Zarek took it, not as a rival, not as an alien, but as someone who'd earned this moment the same way Jace had, with blistered feet, burning lungs, and the unshakable knowledge that they'd survived something real. The bond forged on that hike wouldn't appear in any official report. No flag would be planted. But something important had shifted, an understanding that no simulation could replicate, no algorithm could predict. And as the wind swept across the summit, carrying the scent of pine in triumph, they stood together, not just as cadets, but as equals. Somewhere far below, the trail waited patiently for their return. They descended in silence, gravity doing the work now, but no one mistook it for ease. The mountain let you go with the same indifference it greeted you, without praise, without reward. Knees ached with each downward step. Balance was tested by shifting gravel, and muscles quivered from earlier strain. But there was something different in their posture now. No longer rigid with superiority, the alien cadets moved with a weariness that acknowledged the mountain's authority and, for the first time, their own limits. Jay stayed at the rear this time, watching them navigate the descent. Zarek led now, not with the clip precision of commander, but with the practiced calm of someone who'd earned his place through sweat. He'd started checking on his team unprompted, waiting for stragglers, offering quiet encouragement. Jace noticed it all but said nothing. They reached the lower forest before noon. Light filtered through pine needles and cast flickering shadows across the path. Birds returned to the airspace, their song a sign that nature's alert had passed. A peace settled over the group, deeper than fatigue, something that looked a lot like respect. As they passed the final bend, the clearing came into view. The base camp, modest and quiet, ringed by equipment and a small recon hut. A few Earth cadets sat around a solar cooker, their eyes widening as the battered aliens came into view. One of them stood and whistled. Well, I'll be damned. They didn't tap out. Look alive, gentlemen, Jace muttered with a small grin. We just made history. Zarek didn't respond, but he stepped forward, raising a hand to his chest in a species' formal gesture of acknowledgement. The gesture was returned a little awkwardly by one of the Earth cadets, which seemed to amuse him. Inside the hut, word spread quickly. Command officers appeared, some clearly surprised, others less so. The debriefing was short. Jace gave his account in clipped, precise detail. The aliens confirmed it with nods and occasional correction, but mostly they let Jace speak. Any injuries? One officer asked. No, Jace said. Some bruises, some perspective. There were no commendations, no ceremony, just a brief dismissal and a quiet allowance to rest. Later that evening, Jay stood alone at the edge of the tree line, watching the last light drain from the sky. The air was cooler now, sweet with soil and distant campfire smoke. He didn't hear Zarek approach, but he sensed him. Why didn't you ask for recognition? Zarek asked, stopping beside him. Didn't do it for that. For what, then? Jace considered the question. Because someday you'll be on a world that doesn't care how advanced your tech is. Somewhere your systems will fail. Your weapons won't work. And the only thing keeping you alive will be the voice in your head saying, one more step. I wanted you to meet that voice. Zarek was silent for a long time. When I report to my superiors, he said at last, I will tell them Earth's greatest weapon is its resilience. That's not a weapon, Jace replied. That's a truth. The next day brought a new kind of challenge. Not physical, but political. An emergency session was called between the interspecies cadet liaison and Earth's military educators. There were questions about risk, about protocol, about whether Jace had overstepped. The alien delegation, surprisingly, supported him. Zarek stood and spoke without notes, without embellishment. We sought to test Earth's physical environment as part of our broader understanding of human adaptability. The exercise was enlightening. No data simulation could have offered the same insight. Some still bristled. But was it worth the risk? One official asked. These are not seasoned soldiers. They're cadets. Zarek turned his head slightly, not defiant, but firm. We are cadets. We are here to learn. And we did, thoroughly. The meeting ended in awkward consensus. Jace wasn't reprimanded. He wasn't praised either. But that was fine. He didn't do it for either. Later, Zarek approached him again, this time holding a small, rectangular device, a recording module. He offered it to Jace. What's this? A permanent record of the hike. My perspective. I want it archived alongside your report. Jace took the device, weighing its unexpected significance. Didn't figure you for sentimental. I'm not, Zarek said, but I believe in accurate records. And history should remember not just the hike, but the change it caused. They were interrupted by a new arrival, another alien cadet, younger than the others, with bright silver eyes and a nervous expression. He saluted Zarek and then turned to Jace. I would like to train with you, he said, the translator smoothing the cadence into halting English. I heard the mountain taught something important. Jace glanced at Zarek, who merely nodded. Sure, Jace said. We start at dawn. No tech. Bring good boots. The cadet looked uncertain. How long will we hike? Until you meet yourself, Jace said. That night, as the stars spilled across the sky like shattered glass, Jace lay awake in his cot, the recording device beside him. He didn't open it yet. He would, but not now. Not while the fire in his legs still burned and the mountains still echoed in his memory. Somewhere out there, beyond that darkness, were worlds waiting to be discovered. And somewhere inside the cadets he led was a spark now kindled, one that couldn't be uploaded or programmed. Something real, something earned, and that, Jace thought, might be the most powerful lesson of all. 3 weeks later, the training grounds looked nothing like the sterile corridors and holographic arenas the alien cadets once favored. The forest path had become a daily ritual for some, a proving ground not for brawn or simulated reflexes, but for grit. The hike, once mocked as primitive, had become a benchmark, shared quietly among the alien ranks as the Earth measure. Jace watched from the ridge as the new group assembled at the base. 6 alien cadets stood ready. Their uniforms were cleaner than they'd be in an hour, their posture a little too proud, their eyes flicking with both skepticism and expectation. He could see it. They'd heard stories. Some believed. Some didn't. All of them had something to prove. Zarek stepped beside him. He wore a different look now, still composed, but softened. His boots bore the wear of repeated treks. His breath, when it came, matched the mountain's rhythm. They volunteered, Zarek said, nodding toward the group. I figured. They requested I lead the climb. Jace raised an eyebrow, surprised. You? Zarek smiled faintly. You taught me. It seems appropriate. Jace looked back at the line of cadets. Don't go easy on them. I won't, Zarek said, then added, but I will let the mountain teach. The hike began without fanfare. Jace watched them disappear into green, their shapes swallowed one by trees and rising terrain. He stood still long after they vanished, listening to the silence settle again. The same trail, a different generation. The impact of that first climb had rippled further than he anticipated. Instructors started asking questions, not about the incident itself, but about the method, about what it meant to challenge cadets with no artificial cushion, no protective simulations. There were heated discussions, ethics, liability, tradition, but quietly off the record, cadets kept hiking. Some of them didn't make it all the way up. That was part of it. Turning back was allowed, but quitting without understanding why you were there in the first place wasn't. On the 4th week, a panel of high-ranking officers, human and alien alike, requested a demonstration, a controlled hike, observation only, no interference. Jace agreed with one condition. They'd walk the first segment themselves. They grumbled, of course, protested the need, but protocol allowed it, and curiosity eventually overcame comfort. Jace led them along the switchbacks, uphill through the first real climb. By the 3rd incline, sweat-soaked collars and clipped conversations turned to panting silence. One officer, an Arcadian whose species was known for neural acuity but not endurance, stumbled and had to be steadied by a younger aide. Jace didn't comment. The mountain didn't need interpretation. By the halfway mark, the mood had changed, not dramatically, but enough. Enough that one of the officers, a woman from the Earth delegation with more cybernetics than bone in her legs, turned to Jace and said, You were right to bring them here. I didn't bring them, Jace replied. They followed. Later, he and Zarek sat by a small fire, watching stars blink awake between clouds. The air was thin, the silence deeper. They'll start incorporating it, Zarek said. The hike, the method, it's already in the new rotation. Good, Jay said, but you should know some are resisting. They think it's regression, that we should be moving forward, not backward. It's not backward to connect to something real, Jay said. You can't digitize struggle. You can't shortcut knowing yourself. Zarek nodded slowly. Still, it will be a fight. Then I'll hike it with them. Zarek turned to him. You're not done. I don't think this is something you ever finish. Silence followed, but not the uncomfortable kind. It was a silence of comprehension, of a shared understanding without need for elaboration. Word of the hikes began to filter back to command, not just in the academy, but in the outer ranks. Soldiers on mixed-species deployments began requesting terrestrial training modules. physical resilience, long-form exertion. There were debates about practicality. Of course. But Jace wasn't concerned with politics. He trained those who showed up. That was enough. And they did show up. One, by rumor or recommendation, cadets trickled in, some from deep space posts, others from core world academies. What united them was a hunger for something uncalculated, something uncertain, something real. One morning, Jace arrived to find a cadet waiting by the trail. Not alien, but human, young, nervous. "I read about what you did," she said. "I want to learn the same way." He nodded toward the trail. "You will. It's not about reaching the top." She frowned. "Then what's about?" "It's about who you are when you think you can't take another step." The hike that followed was slow, deliberate. She tripped twice. He didn't help her up, just waited. By the time they reached the overlook, she was shaking with fatigue, eyes glassy. But when she looked out over the valley, her face changed, not into a smile, but into something wider, deeper, an internal unfolding. Jace left her to it. That night, sitting by himself at camp, he replayed the first climb in his head. The alien cadets gasping in thin air, Zarek staggering but silent, the moment that Predator locked eyes with him, and something ancient stirred in the group's collective memory. He had expected resistance, but what he hadn't expected was how much they'd crave it afterward. Once tasted, the raw truth of effort had become addictive, not in a way that glorified pain, but in the way that clarity does. Zarek joined him after sundown. "There's talk of expanding the program," he said. "Different biomes, hikes in other climates, deserts, maybe jungles." Zarek tilted his head. "Even your oceans." One cadet suggested training underwater. Jay smirked. "I hope they like pressure." Zarek didn't laugh. Instead, he looked up at the stars. "You know what I've realized, Jace?" "What?" "That we don't fear Earth's gravity. Not anymore." "No. We fear what it teaches us." Jace looked at the fire, the way its light danced across the metal of Zarek's shoulder plate. "That's probably a good sign." The fire crackled between them. The air held the scent of pine and sweat, and ozone from the evening's dry lightning. From the shadows, more cadets emerged. Quietly, not intruding, just watching, waiting. Jay stood slowly and nodded once. "Let's walk." No orders, no speeches, just movement, up the trail, into the dark. And behind him, they followed,